So what's it like for you to hear your words and music performed by an artist of Ray Charles' caliber?
I'm blown away. It's like that's the highest compliment anyone could ever be paid. I've had people say, "Oh, you know, it didn't sell a lot, and you didn't make." I don't. This is not about money.
No.
Music and what I do, writing songs and writing my book, wasn't about making money. It was about doing what you have to do, what you're supposed to do here on this planet, and that's what my job and my business is to write these songs, let this pour through me. They don't come from me anyway. I'm just this channel. You know, Keith Richards says he's an antenna. I'm a clear transparency for the creative principle of the universe to work through. And it works through and as and for me. So I don't have to really sit around and scratch my head trying to figure out what's next. All I have to do is to make sure I don't scratch my head and figure out what's next. When I just sit and be still, it flows. It's like the highest compliment when someone like Ray Charles or anybody records something that I do. I had a guy contact me the other day on one of my Facebook sites telling me that he opens up his show with Thorn Tree in the Garden. Now, I'm totally flattered, totally blown away. And this is a person who is completely unknown, but I'm touched just like Ray Charles touched me by recording my song.
Well, when you listen to that recording, you can tell he's not phoning that in. He loves the song. You can hear it in his performance.
Yeah, he could identify with it. And that's the thing that Margie told me about Ray. How he picked a song was he had to be able to identify with the singer and the song itself, and the singer making it his. So the singer has to make the song his before Ray could make it his.
Yeah.
You know, it makes such sense, such good sense to me. Yeah. Well, see, I wrote, that song was about me and my experience, one of my many, and so that was so personal that Ray could actually embody that. He could become Bobby for a little while.
He made a believer out of me, I'll tell you that. And
Well,
if you gave me a choice of having like a pile of money or listening to Ray Charles sing a song I wrote,
I'll take Ray Charles every day.
Amen to that. Let's move ahead to the present day. You're living in Austin, which is obviously a very pro-music town, live music capital of the world.
This is a great town. There's like 260-something venues. Everybody's a player. In the heart of the South, there's a church on every corner, and you can barely find a tattoo place or a honky-tonk. Austin, Texas, there's a tattoo place and a honky-tonk on every corner, and you could barely find a church if you wanted one.
Well, I've been to Austin many times. It's a great
love it.
place.
An eclectic community.
You know, Austin's a college town, too, at the University of Texas, but definitely an artistic community. Some really good filmmakers come out of there as well as musicians.
Something's always going on in this town. They're bringing F1 racing here. They got a new Ferrari place. And, you know, I was the first one to sign up to the Ferrari club here in town. So. Wow. Don't have the Ferrari, but I've got the club and I've got a shirt.
That's most of us.
I got two that got lost in England.
I read all about your experiences with cars over there.
I'm probably the only I'm probably the only person that has two Ferraris missing in action, and the only person on the planet to ever pass the Queen of England. Period. Yeah. Much less doing about 140.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stories like that. We're going to get back to the book in a minute, but and let's point out that you didn't know until after you flew by that it was the Queen of England.
I know.
It wasn't intentional.
It wasn't an intentional thing, no.
Well, you know, the majority of your musical energy today is going into performing it and recording with your wife, Coco Carmel, who's a gifted artist in her own right and a real good collaborator with you. If I'm not mistaken, you've done about 7 albums together now?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, she's mixing. She's in the middle of it right now, and our house is pretty much our studio as well. I mean, this reminds me of Leon's old place down off the valley. Like you walk through our front door, and I got my organ here on the right, and to the left there's Coco in front of the board and everything. She's been mixing on our new. This will be our 8th CD together.
And it's going to be called Esoteric?
Esoteric, that's right.
Now, I know in the past you've had notable Austin luminaries like Willie Nelson and one of my favorite guitar players, Eric Johnson. You've worked with them. Is this upcoming album a double album?
It's going to be double, and it's just Coco, myself, and Brandon Temple's playing drums. And Brandon played on our Lovers record. But
Right.
Coco's bass player, sax, she's like the quintessential engineer, producer. So this is a Coco Carmel production.
So she's a vocalist, she's a songwriter, she plays bass, she plays guitar, she plays sax, she's a
Flute.
photographer, she got
Everything.
multi-talents.
Multi-talented, and my book. She's got the front and the back cover of my book, and there's a bunch of stuff on the inside, and some of her artwork is in there as well.
Well, in a lot of autobiographies, you can tell that the author is holding back information, or they're trying to revise history and present things the way they wish they were instead of how they really were. And what I appreciate about your book is how honest you are about every aspect of your life story, and by keeping it so real and genuine and writing with your true voice, I think you've made the lessons that you've learned in your life much more valuable to the reader.
This whole thing, for me, I get people writing me every day, 2, 3, 4 people, sometimes more than that, but who have read the book. I was talking to Coco about this the other day. This book, it's not so much about being finished and making money, being a big success. It is a successful book, and it's been number one, going on the top-rated book in rock music, going on 7 months, number one position, hasn't even budged. I thought the thing was broke until I saw everything under it moving.
You thought your computer was frozen up.
I thought the page was frozen until I saw number 2 move and changed. It became someone else. But I'm number one in rock music, and number 2 for 7 months. Michael Jackson has been number 1. We swapped places for a week in music biographies. It's number 5 in arts and literature. It's number 17 on the bestsellers list. It's pretty crazy. It's number 34 straight across the, no, 27 straight across the board in ebooks. And that's biographies and memoirs, arts and literature, musicians and composers. And I mean, my book is in like 8 different categories, and it's excelling in every one of them. Every day, it moves up a notch or 2. Every day.
Yeah, it does have a touch on a lot of categories. Since this is a music podcast, I focus mainly on that aspect of it. But there's a lot more to your book besides just the music. And before I let you go, I was hoping you could tell one of my favorite stories in the book, which involves your contribution to an urban legend. This involves a particular baseball game. Those snakes.
Mm-hmm. I talked to a friend of mine not long ago, and he said, it was you and Chuck? He said, that thing has turned into a story, man, okay, here's what happened. I had this friend named Chuck Stevens, and I used to go, I lived up in Tiptonville, Tennessee, and it's right on Reelfoot Lake, and that's one of the largest lakes in Tennessee. It's the extreme northwest corner. The Mississippi River backed up for 3 days. They had an earthquake in 1840-something, and it filled up Lake County and this lake. Anyway, I used to go out as a boy. We lived there when I was 13, 14, and 15, and the longest I'd ever really lived in one spot, and my daddy being a preacher and everything, going everywhere he could. Everywhere they'd have him, then they'd run him off. But me and Chuck and I would go catch snakes on the weekend. And we had it's like a jar getter, like your grandma's jar getter. And we have these old John boats, and out there in Reelfoot Lake, they have a lot of cypress knees. And these particular boats ride up over the knee, and so it won't get you stuck on it. And so we were way out there, and we had a couple of burlap sacks, tow sacks. And we've been catching these water snakes, a couple of water moccasins, but most just little ones, and just colorful snakes, and filling these bags up. We'd catch them, and we'd take them back to the shoreline, and then let them out and watch them all go back into the water, And there was one particular day we caught, I don't know, we probably had 2 sacks full of snakes. We had 2 sacks full of, but there was probably 150 snakes that we had. And so what are we going to do with these? We'd already been letting them back out into the lake. And so we said, there was a ball game on. It was Sunday. And all the congregation were still dressed up for God. And we decided to take them up to the ball game and let them out behind the bleachers. And it was a real small town, Tiptonville. Carl Perkins, that's his hometown. Well, it was a mile long from one end of it to the other. But we took these snakes back behind the bleachers, and they were all up there, everybody in their Sunday finest, and we opened the trunk up and let both sacks out. And I'll be dang if they didn't go straight under the bleachers, every one of them, under the bleachers and out under the front of the bleachers toward the field. And we heard the woman go, snake, and then snakes, and then snakes. And there's all these people screaming, and guys are tearing over their wives like they were strangers, man. The baseball players ran off the field, left their gloves. It was a fiasco.
No,
but I ran into my friend Joe Delaney Shank about, 6 or 7 years ago. Actually, it's longer than that ago, because Coco and I have been together for 11. So it was about 12, 13 years ago. I ran into Joe Delaney in Ripley at one of these trade days, and he's played piano with Carl Perkins up until Carl passed. But Joe Delaney was my best friend when we was growing up, and I just happened to run into him on trade day in Ripley, and we got to talking, and I said, and we got talking about the snake story. He said, that was you and Chuck. He said, oh man, he said, that's legend. Thousands of snakes came up out of the ground, So it's like, well, yeah, we became urban legends.
Yeah, now the truth comes out in the book. But I mean, I just got to say, that's genius, man. I mean, that somebody should put that scene in a movie or something. But to actually live it, to be all engrossed in a baseball game, and then to notice that there's 150 snakes coming out from under the bleachers.
Clapping under your feet. It was too funny, man.
So before there was snakes on a plane, there was snakes at the game.
Yeah, there were snakes at the game.
well, there's plenty more stories along those lines in the book. That happens to be my personal favorite. I obviously strongly encourage everyone out there listening to go out and get Bobby Whitlock, A Rock and Roll Autobiography. You can find it literally wherever books are sold. And I also encourage everybody to visit his official website, which is BobbyWhitlockandCocoCarmel.com. And if you live in the Austin area or you have plans to travel there anytime soon, keep in mind that Bobby and Coco perform regularly around town, so be sure to catch their show live while you're there.
Yeah, and also I got my Facebook sites if they want to check those out too. Domino Bobby and Domino Bobby Whitlock and Bobby Whitlock. But it's real interesting because people are always coming on there, and there's a lot of interaction. I set my Bobby Whitlock site up for my book, and of course it turned into something more than just that, Mm-hmm. And it's really good. I'm glad to be able to, at this point in my life, to make myself available to people who are my fans and who have gone to great lengths to listen to my music all these years, and then who've gone out and like a good self and got the book and read it. And I really, really, really appreciate it. You just don't know how much it means to me. Like I was going to say earlier, it's more than, the book is more than just a book anymore. Mm-hmm. Now it's an experience for me. Yeah. Brand new. I didn't even mean to write it. I hadn't planned on writing it.
Well, apparently it just all started when you just answered one fan's question online, and it blew up to the point it became a full-blown book.
Just one question. Who was the girl in the center of the Layla album cover? And I never even thought about that, Wow, it's Kay Poorboy. We didn't even credit her with anything. But good thing we didn't. They wouldn't have ever asked the question.
Do you think if that wouldn't have happened, you never would have wrote the book, or you think it was meant to be?
That was supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree.
supposed to be. It would have happened.
Well, the appreciation that you feel for the people that bought the book, I feel exactly the same way towards you for taking some time out to talk with me. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on my show.
Thanks very much.
I'm going to close the show now with a track from a CD called Metamorphosis that Bobby and Coco released in 2009. It's their interpretation of a song I'm sure you'll recognize. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
What do you do when you get lonely? Nobody's waiting by your side. You've been running and hiding lost too long. Well, it's just your foolish pride. Trying to give you consolation. Your old man has let you down. Like a fool, I fell in love with you. Turned my whole world upside down. Of a sticky situation.